Okay, tonight is the 4th of September, and this is the fourth night we are talking the Theragatha. We come to the group of 7 verses, verse number 459. Ornamented, well, this is by Sundara Samuda. Ornamented, well-dressed, carrying a garland, adorned, with her feet reddened with lac, having put on slippers, a courtesan, 460, taking off her slippers, standing before me with cupped hands, spoke to me softly and sweetly with a smile, 461. You are young to have gone forth, abide in my teaching, enjoy human sensual pleasures. I shall give you wealth, I promise you truly, I shall indeed bring fire. 462. When we are both old, supported by sticks, we shall both go forth. Both ways it will be a winning throw. 463. And when I saw that courtesan beseeching me with cupped hands, ornamented, well-dressed, like a snare of death spread out. 464. Then reason thinking arose in me. The peril became clear. Disgust with the world was established. 465. Then my mind was released. See the essential rightness of the Dhamma. The 3 knowledges have been obtained. The Buddha's teaching has been done. So this Sundara Samuda, he must be young and very handsome. That's why this courtesan. Courtesan is like a geisha, high-class prostitute, to put it bluntly. And must be quite beautiful also. And offered him wealth and all that. But this monk, he must have already attained the 4 jhanas. His mind was not so easily moved. Only when you have strong samadhi, the mind is not easily moved. And then he saw the danger, contemplated the Dhamma and attained enlightenment. That's quite rare. Somebody in that type of situation can become enlightened. Khuddaka, 466. In the thicket of trees on the far side of the Ambataka Padya, having plucked out craving, root and all, meditates, happy indeed. This monk is actually called Khuddaka Badya. 467. Some delight in drums, lutes and cymbals, but at the foot of a tree I abide, I delight in the Buddha's teaching. 468. If the Buddha were to give me a boon, a wish, and if I were to obtain that boon, I should choose for the whole world perpetual mindfulness concerning the body. 469. Those people who have judged me by my appearance and those who have followed me because of my voice, being under the influence of desire and passion, do not know me. 470. The fool, having obstructions all around, does not comprehend the inside and does not see the outside. He indeed is misled by my voice. 471. One who sees the external fruit does not comprehend the inside, but does not see the outside, even if he is misled by my voice. 472. One who sees without obstructions fully comprehends the inside and sees the outside. He is not misled by my voice. Maybe he has an extremely nice voice. A lot of people follow him. Just like nowadays, some singers have a lot of followers. Buddha, 473, was an only child, dear to my mother and dear to my father. I obtained by many performances of vows and petitions. I was obtained by many performances of vows and petitions. That means his parents prayed for him and made vows and all that to get this son. 474. And both of them, my mother and father, from sympathy, wishing me well, seeking my good, brought me near to the Buddha. 475. This son was obtained with difficulty. He is delicate and has prospered in happiness. We give him to you, protector, as an attendant for the conqueror. 476. And the teacher, receiving me, said this to Ananda, "Send him forth quickly, this one will be a thoroughbred." 477. Having sent me forth, the teacher, the conqueror, entered the monastery. The sun had not yet set, then my mind was released. 478. Then the teacher, not neglecting me, rising up from his solitary meditation, said to me, "Come, Bada." That was my ordination. 479. I received ordination when I was 7 years old. The three knowledges have been obtained. Hail to the essential rightness of the Dhamma. So this is another one. 7 years old became Arahant. It must be very special. The parents probably said was obtained by many performances of vows and petitions, probably the only son, and gave him to the Buddha. And the Buddha saw that this one is a thoroughbred, and probably taught him the Dhamma and the meditation. By the same day, became enlightened. And once a person is enlightened, then he has to renounce. He's no more the same person. So normally 7 years old, they don't take the higher ordination. They are normally just given the papaja, which is a samanera. But in his case, because he was already an arahant, he was given the ordination, meaning the bhikkhu status. So Paka 480, seeing the best of men pacing up and down in the shade of the terrace, going up to him there, I worship the best of men. 481. Putting my robe over one shoulder, clasping my hands together, I paced up and down behind the stainless one, the best of all creatures. 482. Then he, skilled in questions, knowing, asked me questions. Fearless and unafraid, I replied to the teacher. 483. When the questions had been answered, the Theragatha was pleased. Looking around the Sangha of monks, he said this. 484. Good for those of Anga and Magadha, whose robe, begging bowl and requisites, lodgings, reverence and homage, this one enjoys. Good for them, he said. 485. From this day onwards, Sopaka, come to see me when you wish, and let this be your ordination, Sopaka. 486. Having received ordination at the age of 7, I bear my last body. Hail to the essential rightness of the Dhamma. Quite a number of 7-year-old arahants. This one, another one. This one must have been a samanera. So he saw the Buddha walking meditation. He also walked behind the Buddha. When the Buddha asked him questions, he could answer without any fear. So, but he doesn't actually say what age he became enlightened. He says he was ordained at the age of 7. Sarabanga, 487. Having broken off reeds with my hands, having made a hut, I dwelt there. Therefore, by common consent, my name was Reed Breaker, Sarabanga. 488. It is not fitting for me to break off reeds with my hands now. The precepts of training have been laid down for us by the famous Gotama. 489. I, Sarabanga, did not previously see the whole complete disease. This disease has now been seen by me, doing the bidding of the one above the Devas. 490. By the very road by which Vipassi went, by the very road by which Sikhi, Vesabu, Kakusanda, Kona, Gamana, and Kasapa, by the straight path went Gotama. These are all the previous Buddhas, Sammasambuddhas. 491. The 7 Buddhas are rid of craving, without grasping, plunging into annihilation, by whom, having become righteousness, venerable, this Dhamma was taught. 492. Namely the 4 noble truths, from compassion for living creatures, pain its arising, the path, the suppression and complete annihilation of pain or suffering. 493. In which the endless pain in journeying on comes to an end. After the breaking up of this body and the complete annihilation of life, There is no other renewed existence. I am completely released in every aspect. Now we come to a group of 8 verses. Mahakachayana, 494. One should not do much work. One should avoid people. One should not exert oneself. He who is greedy and desirous of flavors misses the goal which brings happiness. 495. They know that this respect and homage in high-born families is truly a bog, a fine dart, hard to extract. Honor is hard for a worthless man to give up. 496. It is not with reference to another's action that a mortal's action is evil. Of one's own accord, one should not practice it, for mortals are the kinsmen of their own action. 497. One is not a thief by the word of another. One is not a sage by the word of another. But as the self knows one, so do the devas too know one. 498. Others too do not know that we come to an end here. But those who have good knowledge in this respect, thereby their quarrels cease. 499. The wise man lives indeed even after the loss of his wealth. But if he does not obtain wisdom, even a rich man is not alive. 500. One hears all with the ear, one sees all with the eye, and a wise man ought not to reject everything which is seen or heard. 501. One with eyes should be as though blind, one with ears as though deaf, one with wisdom as though stupid, one with strength as though weak. Then when the goal has been attained, what should lie on the bed of death? So other people's opinions not so important, but we know ourselves, our real self, and the devas and the ghosts also know our real self. Sri Mitta, 502. Without anger and rancor, undeceitful and devoid of slander, truly such a monk does not grieve when he has thus passed away. 503. Without anger and rancor, undeceitful and devoid of slander, always with sense doors guarded, a monk does not grieve when he has thus passed away. 504. Without anger and rancor, undeceitful and devoid of slander, a monk who is of good virtue does not grieve when he has thus passed away. 505. Without anger and rancor, undeceitful and devoid of slander, a monk with good friends does not grieve when he has thus passed away. 506. Without anger and rancor, undeceitful and devoid of slander, a monk of good wisdom does not grieve when he has thus passed away. 507. Whose faith in the Theragatha is unmoving and well-founded, whose virtue is good, pleasing to the noble ones and praised. 508. Who has trust in the Sangha and whose sight has become straight, him they call not poor, his life is not in vain. 509. Therefore, a prudent man, remembering the Buddha's teaching, should devote himself to faith, virtue, trust or faith, and vision of the Dhamma. Mahapantaka. The other day we heard verses from Chula Pantaka, now it's Mahapantaka, the brother. 510. When I first saw the teacher who has no fear from any quarter, agitation came upon me, having seen the best of men. 511. Would anyone transgress who bowed down his head with hands and feet, worshipping such a teacher when he came? 512. Then I abandoned children and wife, and money and grain. Cutting off my hair and beard, I went forth into the homeless state. 513. Possessed of training and right livelihood, well controlled in my faculties, revering the fully enlightened one, I dwelt unconquered. 514. Then a resolve arose, longed for by my heart. I would not sit down even for a moment while the dart of craving was not withdrawn. 515. See my energy and effort as I dwell thus, The three knowledges have been obtained. The Buddha's teaching has been done. 516. I know my former habitation or past life. My Deva I is purified. I am an Arahant, worthy of gifts. I am completely released, without basis for rebirth. 517. Then at the end of night, towards sunrise, having dried up all craving, I sat cross-legged. So this is one of those Arahants who left the family, wife and children, and his property and money, everything. Now we come to the group of 9 verses, Buddha, 518. When the clever man, knowing that old age and death, to which ignorant individuals are attached, are painful, diagnosing pain, meditates, truly mindful, he does not find greater contentment than this. 519. When having struck down attachment, the bringer of suffering and craving, the bringer of suffering arising from the aggregate of the diversified world, he meditates, truly mindful, he does not find greater contentment than this. 520. When having seen by wisdom the blissful eightfold path, the best of paths, cleanser of all defilements, he meditates, truly mindful, he does not find greater contentment than this. 521. When he develops the sorrowless, stainless, causally undetermined, peaceful place, cleanser of all defilements, and cutter of bonds and fetters, he does not find greater contentment than this. 522. When in the sky the thundercloud rumbles, full of torrents of rain, all around on the path of birds, and the monk who has gone into the cave meditates, he does not find greater contentment than this. 523. When seated on the bank of rivers covered with flowers, with garlands of variegated woodland plants, happy indeed he meditates, he does not find greater contentment than this. 524. When at night in a lonely grove, while the sky rains, the fanged animals roar, and the monk who has gone into the cave meditates, he does not find greater contentment than this. 525. When having kept his own thoughts in check inside a mountain, having taken refuge in a mountain cleft, rid of distress and rid of barrenness of mind, he meditates, he does not find greater contentment than this. 526. When happy, destroying stain, barrenness of mind and grief, without obstruction, without craving, dart-free, having indeed put an end to all asavas, he meditates, he does not find greater contentment than this. So if a monk stays in seclusion and he can experience one-pointedness of mind, he's very happy and contented. Now we come to the group of 10 verses. Kalu Udayin. 527. The trees are now crimson, Lord, having shed their old foliage, about to fruit. They illuminate as though a flame. The time partakes of flavor, great hero. 528. The delightful trees in bloom diffuse their scent all around in all directions. Having shed their petals, hoping for fruit, it is time to go forth from here, hero. 529. It is not too cold, nor again too hot. The season is pleasant, fit for a journey, Lord. Let the Sakyas and Kolyas see you facing west, crossing in the river Rohini. 530. The field is ploughed in hope. In hope the seed is sown. In hope merchants go to sea, bringing back wealth. Let that hope of mine in which I stand be realized. 531. Again and again they sow the seed. Again and again Deva King reigns. Again and again farmers plough the field. Again and again grain comes to the kingdom. 532. Again and again beggars wander. Again and again master givers give. Again and again master givers, having given, go to the heavenly place. 533. A hero of great wisdom indeed cleanses 7 generations in whatever family he is born. I think, Sakya, you are the Deva of Devas, for you begot the sage who is truly named. 534. The father of the great seer is called Suddhodana, but the Buddha's mother was called Maya, who, having cherished the Bodhisattva in her womb, after the breaking up of the body, rejoices in the 3 heavens. 535. She, Gotami, having died, having descended from here, being possessed of Deva-like sensual pleasures, rejoices in 5 strands of sensual pleasures, surrounded by those groups of Devas. 536. I am the son of the Buddha, who endures what is beyond endurance, the son of the incomparable venerable Angirasa. You, Sakya, are my father's father. Truly, you are my grandfather, Gotama. So maybe this monk is talking to the Buddha's father. See, 533, a hero of great wisdom cleanses 7 generations. There's this belief that if a person goes forth as a monk, he benefits 7 generations. 3 generations before him and 3 generations after him, and the same generation as him. That means his parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and then this children, and then grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and also his brothers and sisters. Eka Vihariya, 537. If no one else is found in front or behind, it is very pleasant for one dwelling alone in the wood. 538. Come then, I shall go alone to the forest praised by the Buddha, which is pleasant for a resolute monk dwelling alone. 539. Alone, pursuing my aim, I shall quickly enter the grove, which gives joy to sages, is delightful, and is haunted by rutting elephants. 540. In well-flowered Sita Vana, in a cool mountain cave, having sprinkled my limbs, I shall pace up and down alone. 541. When shall I dwell alone, companionless, in the pleasant great wood, my task done, without asavas? 542. May my intention prosper as I desire to act thus. I myself shall bring it to pass. No one can act for another. 543. I myself am binding on my armor. I shall enter the grove, nor shall I come forth from there until I have gained the annihilation of the asavas. 544. While the wind blows cool and sweet-smelling, I shall split ignorance asunder as I sit on the mountain top. 545. In the flower-covered wood, and now in the cool cave, I shall enjoy myself on Giribhaja, delighted by the happiness of release. 546. I am he whose intentions are fulfilled, like the moon on the 15th day. I have completely annihilated all my asavas. There is now no renewed existence. You see, 541, he says, when shall I dwell alone, companionless, in the pleasant great wood, my task done? This one, although he was dwelling physically alone, but if he has a lot of stray thoughts and all that, then he has a companion. But if he has attained enlightenment, then the mind has stopped working, so he has no more companion, then he's really dwelling alone. The Mahakapina, if you remember, in the previous sutta, the Buddha said he's lean with a bent nose or something, but it's a great psychic powers. 547. Neither enemies nor well-wishers, when they see a weak spot in him who sees the future in advance, both the beneficial thing and the unbeneficial. 548. He who has perfected, well developed, and practiced in due order mindfulness of breathing as taught by the Buddha, illumines this world like the moon released from a cloud. 549. Truly my mind is purified, unlimited, well developed, having penetrated and having been applied. It illuminates all the quarters. 550. The wise man lives indeed even after the loss of his wealth, but if he does not obtain wisdom, even a rich man is not alive. 551. Wisdom discerns what is heard. Wisdom increases fame and reputation. In this world, a man with wisdom finds happiness even in pain. 552. This is not a rule for today only. It is not amazing or even strange. When one is born, one dies. What indeed is strange in that? 553. For death is certain immediately after life for anyone who is born. All who are born die here, for of such a nature are living creatures. 554. For what is of advantage to the lives of other men is of no advantage to a dead man. In the case of a dead man, there is weeping, not fame nor being well known in the world, nor being praised by Brahmins and ascetics. 555. Weeping impairs the eye and the body. Color and strength and intellect are ruined. The weeper's enemies become joyful. His well-wishers are not happy. 556. Therefore, one should wish to have prudent men and those of great learning dwelling in one's family, who by the power of their wisdom get to the end of their duty, as one gets to the far bank of a full river by boat. Chula Pantaka. This is the brother of Mahapantaka. 557. Sluggish was my progress. Formerly I was despised, and my brother turned me away, saying, "Go home now." 558. Being turned away at the gateway of the Sangha's monastery, I stood there discouraged, full of longing for the teaching. 559. The Blessed One came there. He touched my head. Taking me by the arm, he led me into the Sangha's monastery. 560. From compassion, the teacher gave me a towel for my feet, saying, "Take careful possession of this pure thing on one side." 561. Hearing his bidding, I remained delighting in his teaching. I practiced meditation for the attainment of the supreme goal. 562. I know my former habitation. My Deva eye is purified. The three knowledges have been obtained. The Buddha's teaching has been done. 563. Fashioning my shape of my body 1,000 times, I, Pantaka, sat in the pleasant mango grove until the announcement of the time. 564. Then the teacher sent a messenger to me to announce the time. When the time had been announced, I approached him through the air. 565. Having worshipped the teacher's feet, I sat down on one side. Perceiving that I was seated, then the teacher received the gift. 566. Recipient of the offerings of the whole world, receiver of sacrifices, field of merit for mankind, he received the gift. This Chula Pantaka, after he renounced, when he was given a meditation object, he could not meditate. So they taught him for some time, and he still could not meditate, and nobody could to help him to make progress. And then they got annoyed with him, and the brother asked him to go home. Then when he came out of the monastery, he was very dejected. So the Buddha came to him, and I think this story is in the Dhammapada commentary, and gave him a towel to clean, and then when he used the towel, then when the towel was dirty, I meditated on it, and then seems he attained concentration, and later he became, he had attained great psychic power. So his body could multiply 1,000 bodies. Kappa, 567, full of stains of different sorts, a great producer of excrement, like a stagnant pool, a great tumor, a great wound. 568, full of pus and blood, immersed in a privy or lavatory, trickling with water, the body always oozes foully. 569, having a binding of 60 tendons, plastered with fleshy plaster, girt with a jacket of skin, the foul body is worthless. 570, linked together with a skeleton of bones, with bonds of sinew threads, it produces its various postures by the union of many things. 571, set out with certainty for death in the vicinity of King Death, a man who has abandoned it, in this very place goes where he wishes. 572, the body is covered with ignorance, tied with a fourfold tie. The body is sinking down in the flood, caught in the web of latent tendencies. 563, joined with the 5 hindrances, afflicted with thought, followed by the root of craving, covered with the covering of delusion. 574, thus this body exists, subject to the compulsion of action, but existing has cessation at its end. Having had various existences, it perishes. 575, the blind ordinary individuals who cherish this body fill up the terrible cemetery. They take on renewed existence. 576, those who avoid this body like a dung-smeared snake, having spurned the root of existence, will be quenched without asavas. This 572, the fourfold tie, as opposed to this fourfold tie, the Pali word is ganta, supposed to mean 4 things: covetousness, ill will, attachment to rules and rituals, and dogmatic fanaticism. Next one is Upasena Vanganta Putta, 577. This is another famous Arahant. For the sake of solitary meditation, a monk should resort to a lodging which is secluded, with little sound, haunted by beasts of prey. 578. Having fetched odds and ends from rubbish heap, this one is also odds and ends of cloth from rubbish heap, cemetery and streets, having made a rough outer robe, he should wear the coarse robe. This is called the Pangsukula Chivara, Pangsukula robe, discarded cloth he picks up to make a robe. 579. Making his mind humble, a monk should wander for alms from family to family without exception, with sense doors guarded, well restrained. 580. But he should be content even with coarse food. He should not seek other flavor in abundance. The mind of one who is greedy for flavors does not delight in meditation. 581. But the sage should live, desiring little indeed, contented, secluded, not living in company with householders, nor homeless ones alike. 582. He should make himself appear as a dull person or a fool. A clever man should not speak excessively in the midst of the Sangha. 583. He should not insult anyone. He should avoid hurting anyone. He should be restrained by the rules of training and should know moderation in eating. 584. He should have appearance well grasped, being skilled in the origin of mind. He should devote himself to calm and insight at the right time. 585. Possessed of energy and perseverance, he should always be earnest in application of mind. But the clever man should not be confident until he has gained the end of pain. 586. When he dwells thus, desirous of purity, all amongst asavas are annihilated, and he attains to quenching. So a wise person should make himself appear as a dull person or a fool. Then he's not so popular. Then he has more time to meditate. Gotama, 587. One should know one's own goal. One should take a careful look at the Buddha's word and at whatever would be fitting here for one who has entered upon the ascetic state. 588. A noble friendship here, an undertaking full of training. and obedience to teachers. This is fitting for an ascetic. 589. Respect towards the Buddha, homage to the Dhamma as is proper, thinking highly of the Sangha. This is fitting for an ascetic. 590. A purified and blameless livelihood, joined with good behavior and association, and the settling of the mind. This is fitting for an ascetic. 591. A manner of acting and a way of avoidance, a pious deportment and exertion in higher thinking. This is fitting for an ascetic. 592. Forest lodgings, secluded, with little noise, fit for a sage to resort to. This is fitting for an ascetic. 593. Both virtue and great learning, investigation into the true nature of the conditions of existence, right understanding of the truths. This is fitting for an ascetic. 594. Thinking that it is impermanent, one should develop the conception of non-self and the conception of the loathsome and discontent with the world. This is fitting for an ascetic. 595. One should develop the constituents of enlightenment, bojjhanga, the elements of supernormal power, the iddhipada, faculties and powers, and the noble eightfold path. This is fitting for an ascetic. 596. A sage should abandon craving. He should split the asavas asunder, root and all. He should dwell released. This is fitting for an ascetic. Now I come to the group of 11 verses. Sankicca, 597. Is there any profit for you in the forest in the rainy season, like Ujuhana, dear child? Viramba is delightful for you, for seclusion is for meditators. 598. Just as the Viramba wind blows away clouds in the rainy season, so are my conceptions connected with seclusion scattered abroad. 599. The black bird, inhabiting a home in a burial ground, causes mindfulness bent on absence of desire for the body to arise in me. Because this crow eats the corpses. 600. Whom others do not protect and who does not protect others, truly that monk lies happily, having no longing for sensual pleasures. 601. With clear water and wide cracks, haunted by monkeys and deer, covered with oozing moss, those rocks delight me. 602. I have dwelt in woods, caves and grottos, in solitary lodgings, in a place frequented by beasts of prey. 603. May these creatures be killed, may they be slaughtered, may they come to harm. I have not been aware of having any ignoble, hate-ridden intentions. 604. The teacher has been waited on by me. The Buddha's teaching has been done. The heavy load has been put down. That which leads to renewed existence has been rooted out. 605. I have attained that goal for which I went forth from the home to the homeless state, the annihilation of all fetters. 606. I do not long for death, I do not long for life, but I await my time as a servant his wages. 607. I do not long for death, I do not long for life, but I await my time, attentive and mindful. Now we come to the groups of 12 verses. Silavat, 608. Here in this world, one should train oneself carefully in virtue only. For virtue, when cultivated, brings all success near at hand. 609. A prudent man should protect virtue, desiring the three happinesses, praise, the gaining of wealth, and rejoicing in heaven after death. 610. For the virtuous man acquires many friends by his self-restraint, but the unvirtuous man, practicing evil, is estranged from his friends. 611. The unvirtuous man gains ill repute and ill fame. The virtuous man always gains reputation, fame and praise. 612. Virtue is the beginning and support and foremost cause of all good things. Therefore, one should make one's virtue pure. 613. Virtue is also the control, restraint, and delighting of the mind, and the fault of all Buddhas. Therefore, one should make one's virtue pure. 614. Virtue is an incomparable power. Virtue is the supreme weapon. Virtue is the best adornment. Virtue is a wonderful coat of mail. Armor. 615. Virtue is a very mighty bridge. Virtue is an unsurpassed perfume. Virtue is the best ointment, whereby one sends an odor in all directions. 616. Virtue is the foremost provision. Virtue is the supreme food for the journey. Virtue is the best vehicle, whereby one goes in all directions. 617. A fool obtains blame in this world, and after death is unhappy in hell. He is unhappy everywhere, not being concentrated upon virtue. 618. A wise man obtains fame in this world, and after death is happy in heaven. He is happy everywhere, being well concentrated upon virtue. 619. Virtue indeed is foremost here, but the wise man is supreme, conquering among men and devas because of his virtue and wisdom. Sunita, 620. I was born in a humble family, poor, having little food. My work was lowly. I was a disposer of withered flowers. 621. Despised by men, disregarded and reviled, making my mind humble, I paid homage to many people. In India, they have this caste system, so this Sunita comes from a very low caste. 622. Then I saw the enlightened one, revered by the Sangha of monks, the great hero, entering the supreme city of the Magadhas. 623. Throwing down my carrying pole, I approached to pay homage to him. Out of sympathy for me, the best of men stood still. 624. Having paid homage to the teacher's feet, standing on one side, I then asked the best of all creatures for admission into the Sangha. 625. Then the merciful teacher, sympathetic to the whole world, said to me, "Come, monk." That was my ordination. 626. Dwelling alone in the forest, not relaxing, I myself performed the teacher's bidding, just as the conqueror had exhorted me. 627. For the first watch of the night, I recollected my previous births. For the middle watch of the night, I purified my deva eye. In the last watch of the night, I tore asunder the mass of darkness. 628. Then at the end of the night, towards sunrise, Indra and Brahma came and revered me with cupped hands. This is Sakadeva Raja and Mahabrahma. 629. Homage to you, thoroughbred of men. Homage to you, best of men. To you whose asavas are annihilated, you are worthy of a gift, sir. 630. Then seeing me revered by the assembly of devas, giving a smile, the teacher said this. 631. By austerity, by living the holy life, by self-restraint and self-taming, by this one is a Brahmana. This is the supreme state of being a Brahmana. I come to the group of 13 verses. Sona Kolivisa. Sona Kolivisa comes from a very rich family, and he was very delicate. In the Vinaya books, we have this description about him. He was so delicate that it seems hair grew on the soles of his feet. Even the king heard about it and wanted to see. And after he renounced, he put so much effort in striving that at night he won't sleep. He'll walk, keep walking, and because he comes from a very rich family, his feet were so delicate, and then he walked so much that they cracked, and the blood was on the walking path, so much blood. So although he used so much effort, he did not attain enlightenment. So he thought of disrobing after some time. And Buddha came to him and told him the simile of the guitar string. If you pull the guitar string, if you tighten the guitar string too tight, when you play, the sound doesn't go very far. And when it's too loose, you play it, also the sound doesn't go far. So it must be just right, just medium. So he got the message. So he didn't use too much effort and didn't relax too much and attained enlightenment. 632. He who was exalted in the kingdom as the attendant of the king of Anga, today is exalted in things sublime. So now has reached the far shore of pain. 633. One should cut off 5, one should abandon 5, one should especially develop 5. A monk who has gone beyond the 5 attachments is called a flood crosser. This one we came across. Cut off 5 lower fetters, abandon 5 higher fetters, develop the 5 faculties. 634. The virtue, concentration and wisdom of a monk who is frivolous, indolent, with his hopes fixed on external things, does not attain fulfillment. 635. For what is to be done is neglected, but what is not to be done is done. Their asavas increase as they are frivolous and indolent. 636. But those who constantly undertake mindfulness concerning the body do not practice what is not to be done, continuously doing what is to be done. The asavas of the mindful and attentive come to an end. 637. Go on the straight way which has been pointed out. Do not turn back. One should urge on the self of one's own accord. One should attain to quenching. 638. When my energy was overtaxed, the teacher, unsurpassed in the world, one with vision, propounding the guitar string simile, taught me the Dhamma. 639. Hearing his bidding, I remained delighting in his teaching. I practiced equanimity for the attainment of the supreme goal. The 3 knowledges have been obtained. The Buddha's teaching has been done. 640. Of one who is intent upon going forth, and upon mental seclusion, who is intent on non-harming, and upon the annihilation of grasping. 641. Is intent upon the annihilation of craving and non-confusion of the mind. Having seen the uprising of the sense bases, the mind is wholly released. 642. For the monk who is wholly released and whose mind is calm, there is nothing to add to what has been done. Nothing remains to be done. 643. Just as a solid mass of rock is not moved by the wind, so sights, tastes, sounds, smells, and all things to touch. 644. Mental objects, pleasant and unpleasant, do not cause a venerable one's mind, which is steadfast and unfettered, to tremble, and he sees its passing away. Now we come to groups of 14 verses. Revata. 645. You find as the verses go longer, it's more interesting because then we get the whole picture. When I went forth from the home to the homeless state, I was not aware of having any ignoble, hate-ridden intentions. 646. May these creatures be killed, may they be slaughtered, may they come to harm. I have not been aware of having any intention in this long period of time. 647. But I have been aware of love, infinite and well developed, practiced in due order as taught by the Buddha. 648. I am a friend to all, comrade to all, sympathetic to all beings, and I develop a mind full of love, metta, always delighting in non-harming. 649. I gladden a mind which is immovable, unshakable. I develop the holy state, not cultivated by evil men. 650. Having attained to non-reasoning, the disciple of the fully enlightened one is straightway possessed of noble silence. This non-reasoning or non-thinking refers to the second jhana. This state of the second jhana, where the thoughts cannot rise up, is called the state of the Aryan silence, where the mind stops chatting. 651. Just as a rocky mountain is unmoving, well-founded, so a monk, like a mountain, does not tremble after the annihilation of delusion. 652. To a man who is without sin, always seeking purity, a hair's tip measure of evil seems as if the size of a cloud. When a person is very pure, even a little wrongdoing is like something very big to him, because he is very sensitive. 653. As a frontier city is guarded inside and out, so you should guard yourselves. Let not the opportunity pass you by. 654. I do not long for death, I do not long for life, but I await my time as a servant his wages. 655. I do not long for death, I do not long for life, but I await my time, attentive and mindful. 656. The teacher has been waited on by me, the Buddha's teaching has been done, the heavy load has been put down, that which leads to renewed existence has been rooted out. 657. I have attained that goal for which I went forth from the home to the homeless state, the annihilation of all fetters. 658. Strive with vigilance, this is my advice. Come now, I shall be quenched. I am completely released in every respect. We come to Gotama, 659. Just as a noble thoroughbred, yoked to a load, enduring a load, oppressed by the excessive burden, does not try to get rid of his yoke. 660. So those who are filled with wisdom, as the ocean with water, do not despise others. This is the noble state for living creatures. 661. Come in time into the power of karmic time, subject to various existences. Men come to grieve. Those young men grieve in this world. 662. Elated by anything having the characteristic of happiness, or cast down by anything having the characteristic of pain. Fools are struck down by both, not seeing things as they really are. 663. But those who, in the midst of pain and happiness, have overcome the seamstress, stand like a threshold stone. They are neither elated nor cast down. 664. Not to profit nor loss, not to fame nor reputation, not to blame nor praise, not to pain nor happiness. 665. To nothing do they cling, as a drop of water does not cling to a lotus leaf. Everywhere wise men are happy, everywhere they are unconquered. 666. There is loss with righteousness and unrighteous profit. Righteous loss is better than unrighteous profit. 667. There is the fame of those of little wisdom, and the lack of fame of the wise. Truly the lack of fame of the wise is better, not the fame of those with little wisdom. Stop here for a moment. People with little wisdom in the world, they like fame, like to be famous, like to be known as so and so. But wise people, they hide their wisdom. 668. There is praise by fools and censure by the wise. Truly, censure by the wise is better than praise by fools. 669. There is happiness arising from sensual pleasures and pain springing from seclusion. The pain springing from seclusion is better than happiness arising from sensual pleasures. Stop here for a moment. Here, basically, also means that the pain, the suffering from walking the spiritual path is better than the pain of enjoying life in the world. When we walk the spiritual path, we renounce. It's painful, a lot of suffering, physical suffering. But it's worth it because in the end you will get happiness. Whereas the path of worldly sensual pleasures, you enjoy first and pay later, credit card. 670. There is life with unrighteousness and death with righteousness. Death with righteousness is better than life with unrighteousness. So doing the right thing and you die for it is better than doing the wrong thing and have a life. 671. Those who have eliminated sensual pleasures and anger, whose minds are calm in various existences, live unattached to the world. Nothing is pleasant or unpleasant for them. 672. Having developed the constituents of enlightenment, the faculties and the powers, having attained to highest peace, they are quenched without asavas. Shall we stop here? And anything to discuss? This last one by Gotama, a lot of good advice.
The spiritual path is a gradual one. The spiritual path is a gradual one. So, Kanadi's advice for those young people who wish to make, who wish to go forward, especially those very young and those who may not be young but very new to the Dhamma. Some they don't know, they're not experienced in the 8 precepts, and even the 5 precepts before they come to Vihara, they do not even know that they need to practice Pancasila. And for these people who have intention to go for, what would one give advice?
Actually, all this necessary advice is already in all the suttas of the Buddha. If you have listened to the Nikaya talks which I have given, all the advice is already given there. You just need to. The Buddha says his teachings are complete and perfect. There's nothing more complete and perfect than the Buddha's words. So everything is there. And basically the Buddha says if you want to walk the spiritual path, that means the Noble Eightfold Path, we have to start with the first factor. Right view, and right view, as the sutta says, comes from listening to the Dhamma and paying proper attention. And then when we understand the Dhamma, we have right view, we have entered the path, otherwise we have not entered the Noble Eightfold Path. A lot of people think they are practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, they have not even entered the Noble Eightfold Path because they have not attained right view. In the suttas, I think Majjhima Nikaya 117, the Buddha says there's only one way to enter the Noble Eightfold Path, and that is by the first factor, right view. That means understanding the Dhamma. Understanding of the Dhamma is so important that the Buddha called his disciples savakas. Savakas means hearers or listeners. Those who listen to the Buddha's words and understand. Only those are his real disciples. Because if you understand, then your faith is unshakable. You'll always be the Buddha's disciple. But if you don't understand the Dhamma, then one moment you say you have faith, another moment you have no faith. One moment you want to practice, another moment you are pulled away by worldly attractions. So the Noble Eightfold Path has to be practiced in that way. The first factor, right view, will bring you to the second factor, right thoughts. And right thoughts will bring you to the third factor, right speech, which will bring you to the fourth factor, right action, which will bring you to the fifth factor, right livelihood. And from there, you go into more serious practice by the cultivation of the mind, that is right effort, and then right mindfulness or right recollection, and then right concentration. So if a person doesn't want to renounce to attain enlightenment, then you practice the first 5 factors. First 5 factors are the most important. But if you want to get out of samsara after the first 5 factors, then you practice the 6th and 7th and the 8th factor. So you must have the wisdom to know how to practice also. So what you can do, you must know your means also. If you have not really become a full-time monk as a novice, no point to practice so hard because you won't be able to sustain it. Just like today I was talking with some lay people and 2 of them are young, one couple. You have this young couple, I think in their 30s, and then another couple in their about 60. And this young couple, they had just come into the Dhamma, they're not sure what to practice. And this old couple is telling them that meditation is the highest merit. Doing dana and keeping sila is not so meritorious, and urging them to meditate because it's the highest merit. But I told them to do dana, sila and listen to the Dhamma more. And I discourage them from meditation. Why? Because I know they cannot practice meditation. They are so busy looking, trying to make a living and always worried about the customer not paying them and whether they have enough orders and all these things. So it's not possible for them to meditate. We can see quite clearly. So no point when you cannot do. Even though we know meditation is the highest merit, for certain people it's not the best alternative because they can't practice it. So in the same way, if you come and live in the monastery, you also have to use your wisdom. If a monastery is young and new like this, there's a lot of work to be done. Everybody has to do at least 2 hours of work. And you want to go and meditate all the time, it's not practical. It's not practical. When you live alone, when you are a full-time monk, you live alone, then you can do that. Because once you start something, you must be able to maintain it. If you can't maintain it, there's no point to start. And then, of course, it's if you want just to get a taste of it, it's okay. But always remember, whether you can keep it up. Some people, we know many lay people, sometimes they are too serious about meditation. Many of them get a breakdown. Many of them get a breakdown. Because why? Because the conditions as a layman is not suitable for a lay person to be too serious about meditation. And then they practice too hard, and then they have too much pressure from their work, too much pressure from their family, and still they want to practice so hard, then they get a breakdown. And we have seen it so often, so many times. It shows you don't know, you don't know yourself, you don't know your situation. So always have to use wisdom. But the best guide is always listen to the Dhamma, the Buddha's words. We notice in the suttas and the Vinaya, the Buddha generally does not encourage lay people to meditate, but he encourages the monks to meditate. Although he sometimes does tell lay people to meditate, but not seriously, because it's not practical. So you have to know. For lay people, maybe you practice 1 or 2 hours when you get up in the morning. That's the best time. But if you are a monk, it's different. But even if you are a young monk, the first 5 years, you have a lot of things to learn, and it's also not possible to want to devote too much time to meditation. There is a time for everything, you must know. So, as I mentioned before, there are certain traditions like the Zen school. When a person becomes a monk, for the first 5 years he's not even allowed to meditate. He has to chop wood, he has to plant vegetables, got to serve the monks, do all the cooking, everything. And you finish 5 years and then you don't do all this and then you just meditate. So there's a time for everything. So you got to know the situation and you got to know yourself.
So investigate the Dhamma. How to investigate? What to investigate?
First you have to listen to the Dhamma. This practice of the Bojjhangas, the factors of enlightenment, how to practice it is explained very well in great detail in the Samyutta Nikaya. So you have to listen to those or read the suttas there on the Bojjhanga. There the Buddha says a lay person or a monk, he comes to the teacher, then he has to be respectful, and then he got to be to pay attention to what the teacher says. So if the teacher finds that he's worthy of teaching, then the teacher teaches him the Dhamma. And then after he hears the Dhamma, he got to reflect on it. This reflection on the Dhamma is the investigation. So after that, if he understands the Dhamma, then he attains faith. When he attains faith, then he wants to put more effort. That time he thinks of meditation.
Because we've seen quite a number of lay devotees who come in with very shallow knowledge of the Dhamma, and some still have much defilement, very selfish, greedy, and a lot of easily agitated, a lot of anger. So, but they aim or have intention to go forward. So I asked Mahathera some people think that just by studying the Dhamma you can actually get rid of the great hatred and illusion, or by going forth you can get rid of all these defilements very fast.
I think I mentioned before that some people they want to attain this and attain that, but the spiritual path basically is reducing, cutting our defilements and practicing wholesome states, getting rid of unwholesome states and cultivating wholesome states. So we must always look into our defilements, look into our mind, and whenever we react to any words, or whenever our emotions come up, or whenever we think of anything, or we think in a certain way, we must always try to find out what is the motive. Why do we react like this? Or why do we think in a certain way? So when we start asking, then we know our real intentions, our real motives. And if you do this, you find sometimes you think in a certain way because of the ego. And then also you react in a certain way also because of the ego, or the greed, or the anger, and all these things. So only when we see our shortcomings, then we can change. If we don't look into our own mind and see the faults, we can never change. We read from the suttas, the Buddha, it is stated like in the Dhammapada, not by shaving the head do you become a monk, not by begging for alms do you become a monk, Not by wearing rag robes do you become a monk. Not by practicing the austerities, the dutangas, do you become a monk. It's by getting rid of the defilements and cultivating wholesome states that you really become a monk. So the practice of the spiritual path is always inside. It's not the outer show. Nowadays we find certain, especially younger monks, they like to show themselves as being very austere, practice certain austerities, do tangas and all that. That is all for show only. What is important is inside. Getting rid of our defilements, that is the real. That's why we read in some of these verses that the real color of the Arahant, of the holy man, is inside. He doesn't show his color outside. His color is always hidden inside. So it is the inside that is important, not the outside.
In the original sutta, it seems that going forward is quite simple. But right now we have first have to pay homage to the Triple Gem and then take the 10 precepts. Then I'm wondering, when did this start?
Oh, this started even during the Buddha's time. Initially, the Buddha just gave ordination to monks by just saying, "Ehi bhikkhu, come bhikkhu, or come monk," and there was ordination. Then later, he used that he said that people who want to be ordained have to take the 3 refuges. And then later, when more people wanted to ordain, it was not possible for the Buddha to ordain so many people. Then he allowed the monks to ordain. So when he allowed the monks to ordain, then he made it more complicated. You got to be ordained by a sangha. You got to have at least 10 monks. And then the monk has to request for it. All this is in the Vinaya book. It's very detailed, how it developed stage by stage, slowly by slowly. There's a time when, there's one time when somebody came to the monastery and then with the intention to ordain, and then they ordained him, cut off his, shave off his head and all that. Then later something happened, and he said, "I never asked to ordain, why you all ordained me?" So after that, the Buddha said he has to request to be ordained before he can be ordained. So these things develop. So later, when the Sangha ordained, then that person has to request. Then they got to find out, because sometimes they ordain somebody and then they found, oh, he's in debt. Now they call what? Along chasing him. Want to chop him up because he didn't pay his debt. So you got to ask him during the ordination, are you free of debt? You owe somebody money? And then also, do you have some sickness? Do you have some disease? And there were some who were, hermaphrodite, half man, half woman, came to ordain as a monk. Later they found out. And also have to ask, are you a man, or are you half man, or what? And then also there was a time when the Naga, a snake spirit, he was disgusted with his snake body. He wanted to be reborn as a man, as a higher deva. So he used his psychic power to change into a human form and became a monk. And then later, when he fell asleep in the kuti, he changed into a huge python. And his kuti mate shouted in terror. So after that, the Buddha put this condition again. When somebody ordains, I must ask him, are you a human being? Look like a human being, or only look like a human being, sound like a human being, but not a human being.
just mentioned that with illness we cannot renounce. What kind of illness are they?
Or there were certain illness during the Buddha's time. They were stronger. I think like TB, leprosy, skin disease. I have to check the Vinaya book.
But they still, the first step is they have to take the Theragatha.
Yes, in the process of higher ordination, they take the Pabaja first, then, but it proceeds in sequence, and then after that they take the higher ordination. That's why you find the suttas when sometimes these external ascetics, they want to go forth, they ask for the going forth and the higher ordination. Sometimes they translate it as the going forth and the admission. It's actually the Pabaja and the Upasampada. Yeah, Kawai.
I have another question. It's about verses 584. 584, page 38. Can Bhante elaborate the first two sentences? I don't quite understand.
Is it? He should have appearance well grasped, being skilled in the origin of mind. He should devote himself to calm and insight at the right time. Is it? I'm not so sure about this appearance well grasped. It could mean understand the nature of appearance. Well grasped means understand. Or in the suttas, the Buddha says, when a form comes before your eye, don't pay too much attention to the general features or the minor details. So it may mean that. Skill in the origin of mind is when we go into our mind, then we can understand how the mind works. There's one meditation which has crept into jnana yoga, and that is to find the origin of this I. You look into your mind. Suppose now, with your eyes closed, you look into your mind. And then you ask yourself, who are you? Like in Zen Buddhism, they have this Kung An, isn't it? Koan. Wo also say, who am I? So when you look into your mind and you ask yourself, who am I? You cannot be the body, because one day your body will die and disappear entirely. So when you ask yourself, who am I? Basically, this knowing consciousness, this awareness, this knowing mind. In Thailand, they call the Puru, the knowing one. Puru, Long Po Man. Yes, this. So this, the I is the knowing. Okay. So when you look into the knowing, you find it is just awareness, consciousness. So if you stay with the knowing mind, then slowly your mind becomes one-pointed. And then we are able to get your mind one-pointed, no stray thoughts. Then you investigate. Where's the origin of this mind? You go to the source of your consciousness. This is knowing the origin of the mind.
May I ask, for some people, when they have meditated for quite a number of years, they still have hot temper. Is it they practice wrongly or not?
If they still have hot temper, it means their mind has not calmed down. If their mind has calmed down and they have attained one pointedness of mind, then they find it so pleasant. They don't want to get angry. Even they have reason to get angry, so they don't want to get angry. When you get angry, you upset your whole system. Okay, shall we end here?